Welcome to the Teach Abroad Lifestyle Podcast. Today we're going to discuss how to form great relationships with your co-teachers. And first things first, we'd like to give some shout outs to Miles, Amanda, and Elena. Thank you so much for your feedback on what you would like to hear more about from schools when you're considering interviewing with them. And also congratulations on getting placed at 3 great schools overseas. Now, our guest today is an old friend of ours from Korea who has some great advice for new teachers going overseas about dealing with co-teachers. And although it is public school specific knowledge and she taught in Korea specifically, her advice really can apply to teaching abroad in general and to dealing with fellow teachers at any type of school that you're at. Matt's gone today, so we're just going to jump right into it. Today we're talking with Meredith, one of Matt and my closest friends from Korea, and when we were sitting down to think about who we would want to come on to this, the first few episodes with us, we tried to think about people who would be excellent role models for new teachers thinking about going abroad. So everything that she has to say is good advice. Write it down, take notes, and welcome, Meredith. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Meredith. I'm from Canada, and I graduated from Teachers College in 2009, and there just weren't a lot of teaching jobs in Canada, so I went over to Korea in 2010, and I taught English there for 3 years.
And why did you decide to go over there in the first place? I know this is kind of off topic, but nonetheless, I'm sure people are curious what other people go over for.
Yeah, I went over there because, like I said, I graduated from Teachers College and I just really wanted to get into teaching right away. And it's really competitive in Canada. It still is. And supply teaching isn't something that ever really appealed to me because I like to know what I'm doing every day and I like routine. So I did spend 6 months teaching up north in Canada, actually, but that just really wasn't for me. I like to be with my friends. I like to see new places. I like to go out and do things, and teaching in a remote part of Canada just wasn't fulfilling me. So I'd heard a lot of good things about teaching in Asia and South Korea especially. So I just thought I'd give it a shot. Why not, right?
Yeah, I mean, Matt always told me that the reason he went was very similar. You know, he loved teaching. He got certified, and you know, you call it supply teaching. I call it substitute teaching.
Right.
You know, me not being a substitute teacher. Obviously, I don't know the lingo, but he always said that he wanted his own classroom, and so you know he would do whatever he could to get that, and also you know fulfill his desire for travel and new experiences. So sounds pretty similar, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went over to Korea and you taught in the public school system. So this episode is kind of focused on what it's like to have a co-teacher and what hopefully some tips are for people thinking about going overseas to teach in a co-teacher environment. It might not necessarily be public, but I think you know we're agreed that most public school positions have co-teachers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about like the first week you were in Korea. First of all, where were you within you know the Korea sphere, and because I know you weren't in Central Seoul, and then you know what it was like having a Korean or a co-teacher with you that first week.
Well, I was teaching about 40 minutes south of Seoul, so I was on the Seoul subway line, which was great because I had easy access to the city. The city I taught in had everything I needed, and I was about a 5 to 10 minute bus ride from my school. So what's great about the public school system and the co-teachers is that you'll have one specific co-teacher assigned to you, and they're kind of like your caretaker. They make sure that everything in your apartment's right. They make sure that your teaching schedule's right. They communicate all the information from the school to you. And, you know, it really is hit and miss with co-teachers. Like any relationship with people, maybe you don't get along with everybody. Yeah. But I really lucked out. My co-teacher was the nicest woman. She would do anything for me. You know, if I was cold, she'd give me her sweater. If it was raining, she'd try to hold an umbrella over me. I'm really tall, so it looked kind of awkward. But the first week, she just really took care of me. She walked me around my city. She took me to stores that she thought I might like. She pointed out places I could go and get services done. And for teaching, what was really great is she didn't throw me right into my first couple classes. She let me observe. She let me kind of get my desk together, take a look at the textbooks. So my first week was just a lot of observing and just a lot of taking everything in. But I know with some schools, you might be thrown into it. So I just want to give that warning.
Is that a normal first experience with a co-teacher? Because I've heard some bad stories of co-teachers.
So have I, and that's why it totally varies. Everything about going to Korea, it varies. Where you live, who you work with, what your school is like, what your city is like. So this is just my experience. So I don't want to generalize and say that that's a normal first week, but that was my first week.
And one of the reasons that we identified this to talk about, you and I, was because I never had a co-teacher. I never worked in the public school system. I have worked with Korean teachers, but never with a co-teacher. In the classroom, doing the same, helping the same students together. And again, one of the reasons that we wanted to talk about this was because we both have heard lots of people complain about their co-teachers, right? And I think this is probably a good topic to develop the right mindset for how to approach the idea of working with a foreign co-teacher. So,
Right.
What sorts of things have you heard from people about their co-teachers, whether that be good things or bad things?
I think one of the biggest problems that people have that I've heard about co-teachers, one of the bad things would be miscommunication. And that is something I experienced too. There's a huge language barrier and there's a huge cultural difference when you go to Korea. So I guess one of the worst bad things is just not knowing what's going on or not understanding why certain things are happening. And another thing would be just different teaching styles. When you have a co-teacher, I went to teachers college, I developed my own teaching style. So then teaching in a public school, most likely you won't have, unless you're at a very small school, you won't have one co-teacher. I had four. So I'm working with four very different co-teachers and four very different teaching styles. So
would you say that there is a lot of tension caused by the differences in, learned methodology?
I think there could be, and I
With
think I
with
went
you,
over
there
that.
wasn't, though?
With me, I would say there was, but I just tried not to focus on that.
Hmm.
Again, then my advice would be that when you go to a public school and you're teaching with a co-teacher, the way I approached it was that it's their class and I'm helping them. So I'm doing some translating. I'm definitely doing some lesson planning. I'm very involved with the kids, but I tried not to take over and I tried to understand that their teaching style was different from mine. Whereas some people go over to Korea and they think it's my class, these are my kids, and they get very frustrated with their co-teacher. I tried to be very open and understanding where they're coming from and knowing that I wasn't planning on staying there forever. So I don't want to go there and try to change their teaching style. They've developed their own and it's working for them. So I just tried to be very flexible. And with my four co-teachers, I kind of had different teaching styles, which with each of them, how I supported them.
So, so is that the right mindset to have? Like you're kind of seeding the classroom to the Korean teacher. That person. Is that the mindset that you would suggest other people have as well? Like give the classroom to them in the mental sense, but provide as much support as you can as the foreign English teacher.
That's what I would recommend. I mean, everybody's different. Some people have stronger personalities and maybe want to take more control of the classroom, but that wasn't my view, and
Hmm.
that wasn't why I thought I was there.
Well, walk us through a normal class with a co-teacher.
A normal class with a co-teacher would be about a week before we'd plan the lesson. I would ask them what what lesson are we going to cover because you follow textbooks in Korea. So I would ask them, get some advance notice, and then I would ask them, what are we going to do or what do you want me to do? So communication was really important. So you didn't jump into a class and think, oh, I don't know what's going on. And then, okay, what did you do to prepare for the lesson? Oh, I didn't do anything. So I would always try to be prepared. I would ask them what they wanted me to do. Maybe I would prepare a game, or they'd ask me to do a certain part of the lesson, maybe a look and speak section where the kids would look at something and then repeat after me to practice the pronunciation. And if we did games, I would just try to really get the kids excited, motivate them to participate, things like that. So that would be a typical class.
So if I were a new teacher going abroad and I was having my first week with a co-teacher in the classroom, I would want to be collaborating with them on everything, or would I want to develop a series of lesson plans for the next week and then bring it to them and say, what do you think about these?
Yeah, you could do that.
So
I was
how
very,
collaborative is it?
it depends on the teacher.
Hmm.
I had some, and this is why it's really important to understand that it's case by case. Out of my four co-teachers, I had some co-teachers where they didn't want me to do anything, so I would just try to find little things that I could do. So if they were teaching the entire lesson, I would just try to be walking around the class and supporting the kids, making sure they were on task, making sure their books were open, making sure they were paying attention. And then I had some teachers where I was leading the class and they wouldn't even help me translate. So I had 0 and 100, and then I had 100 and 0, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you're talking about like support from your co-teacher?
Yeah. It
Uh,
just, and I had some where it was 50-50.
this is all interesting for me actually because I'm trying to envision how that would be. I worked with, when I ran my little neighborhood school in Seoul for a couple years, I worked with a Korean American. He was American in the sense that he lived in America since he was 10. And, we taught classes together, very small classes, and he was, he spoke fluent Korean. So, I spoke pretty good Korean, but not enough to, be the disciplinarian. So I always kind of left that to him, and we kind of developed that role. It's kind of like good cop, bad cop in one sense.
Hmm.
Would you say that that's a good way to do it? Would you have the Korean teacher handle discipline? But it sounded like perhaps you were dealing with that aspect of it as well. Like what sort of role breakdown would you recommend if in your ideal situation? What sort of roles would you have versus what sort of roles would the Korean teacher have?
Okay, well, actually, I feel like in my last semester in Korea, I did work with a co-teacher where I felt it was an ideal situation and it was 50-50. And I think that that was perfect. We would plan the lesson together. It was very clear. You do this, I do this. You prepare this, I prepare this.
Hmm.
And then we would collaboratively teach together. She would take care of the discipline. She kind of started to realize the way I reacted. And basically, if the kids weren't listening or if they were calling out, I would just stop. That's something that I've developed as a teacher is I don't want to talk over the kids. I don't want to fight against them. In a Korean class, you can have up to 35 to 40 kids. So the English teacher is not going to win if I'm yelling over them. So when I would be teaching, if they were talking, I would stop. She would see that I've stopped, and then she would take control back of the class by saying something in Korean or because for me with co-teaching, I saw the kids once a week, whereas she saw them 3 times a week. So
Okay.
it was more important, I think, that she followed her behavior or class management and behavior structures because I didn't necessarily know exactly what those were.
Okay, and when it comes to collaborating with a teacher on like lesson plans or student assessments at the end of semesters or months, like what sort of how do you collaborate? Whenever I talk about the word collaborate, I always in some way have some sort of online tool that Matt and I will use for some business purpose. But what sort of collaboration tools did you use? It just paper and pencil? Did you just kind of like post a note to her desk when you needed her to look at a lesson plan, or how would you actually would you have a set time every week where you would sit down together? Like how would you do it?
The way I would do it is when I was wrapping up a lesson with my co-teacher. So once I knew that all of those lessons were complete for the week, I would want to start focusing on next week's lesson. So on the last class, maybe the last 10 minutes before I had to leave, once the kids were gone, I would just say to her, okay, good job. That was a great lesson this week. We would talk about it. What were some things that were good? What were some things that were bad?
Right.
What do you want to do for next week? And we'd kind of go from there. So we were constantly building on positive things that we'd already taken from our lessons.
Do you think that was really helpful to have a once a week sit down with your co-teacher? Because I know that's well, the obvious answer is yes, but like, is this something that you would recommend new teachers do immediately when they arrive, when they get a new co-teacher, and they're wondering, okay, how are we going to work together? How can I help her slash him? How can he or she help me? Is that something that you would recommend setting up, from the get-go, a weekly meeting with your co-teacher?
Yes, I think that's a great idea. I think that's really important. And even if it's not just to discuss the lesson, if maybe the following week you don't have a lesson, just to talk about what went well and what went wrong. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we both have heard lots of people complain about co-teachers before. It sounds like you've gotten lucky in one of your co-teachers, and perhaps somewhat unlucky in another co-teacher.
Hmm.
So why would you recommend? And one thing you told me was that you have to watch and learn and be nice essentially to them. And what is it that the co-teachers are doing that you're not having to deal with?
In terms of the paperwork I was talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what I found when I was teaching in Korea is that they are teaching all of their regular classes, and that those are the ones I'm supporting them in. But I felt like that almost came secondary to the paperwork that these public school teachers have to do. They're all assigned jobs. So they are teachers and then they're in charge of other things. So, for example, one of my co-teachers was in charge of the Scouts program. So he was constantly writing newsletters for parents, meeting with the kids a couple afternoons a week. I mean, they're teaching, and when they're not teaching, they're sitting at their desks doing paperwork or they're in meetings. There really isn't a lot of downtime for them. So I was always trying to keep that in mind, how busy they were. And just that's why I think I tried to support them in what was helping them. And that's why, because each teacher is different, I realized they needed support differently.
Right. And if I'm a new teacher going there, would I want to help them with any of that paperwork, or could I help them with any of the paperwork?
No, you can't. And it's all Korean. And I can't even give more examples because I really didn't ask questions. I just knew that they were super busy doing stuff all the time. And that's why I think the way you can support them is by being the best teacher you can and giving them the best support so that the kids can get the best lessons.
Yeah, because that's what I think that is probably the best way to boil it down is, don't complain about what your role is, because you know that their role is significantly greater, correct?
They have so much going on. If you go and teach in a public school, you'll realize that after one day of sitting in the English office.
Yeah, and furthermore, I mean, what is the pay scale like between you versus perhaps imagine a new foreign English teacher like yourself coming over to Korea, getting paid between $2,000 and $2,500 a month.
Yes.
And what would a Korean teacher, what would your co-teacher be making who is doing more work with you
I
and
know.
has more on their shoulders just responsibility wise and has experience? What would they be getting paid?
Less than me.
Yeah.
And I'm getting so many more benefits. I'm getting to leave when I work from 8:40 to 4:40. I get to leave at 4:40.
Yeah.
Every day they're all still there doing paperwork. Every day I left at 4:40. I felt really bad for them. And
But
I'm
you just do
getting
what you're told, right?
exactly, and that's why I felt if I'm there for 8 hours, I'm going to be the most useful teacher and most resourceful teacher I can be to help them so that I can make their lives a little bit easier because that's the way I looked at being there is yes, I'm there to teach English, but I'm also there for support for them.
I'd say that that's the best takeaway sentence right there. I mean, be supportive, be there for them, show them that
Hmm.
you have a passion for education and that you
Hmm.
want to be the best teacher possible, and we'll help them do what they need to do to support that.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I think that's great. Is there anything else you wanted to add about being a public school teacher specifically with a co-teacher?
I think we've covered a lot of it. I think
Yeah.
that if you can just go to Korea, if you're teaching in a public school and just try to be very open-minded and understanding, I think you're going to have a great time.
Great. One of the things that I was going to steal from you, the quick tip, but I think it'd be better if you described it because I actually never used this website, but you had a suggestion for a great website for teachers to use when they're over there, right?
Yes, I discovered this website when I was there. The teacher I replaced actually left it in her notes, and I went on it within, I'd say, my first day there, and it's waygook.org, so it's WAYGOOK.
And we're going to have all those links. We're going to
Yeah.
list all those links underneath the episode on the website.
And it's basically a community forum for teachers in South Korea or ESL teachers anywhere, but it really focuses on teaching in South Korea. And what was amazing was they have a section of lesson plans. And in a public school, you're following textbooks. So you can click on the textbook that your school is using, and you can go through and find the chapter you're working on and the lesson you're working on. And teachers are all sharing games they've made, PowerPoints they've made, vocabulary they're using, what's working, what's not. So for teaching, I found that was a very resourceful website. And there's also these forums on there. So what's happening in the news in South Korea, what's happening in the news in the world.
Is it a pretty good community? I mean, are people interacting with each other, teachers
It's a
specifically?
great community. Yes, it's a great community for teachers specifically. And even if you're not looking for a lesson plan, if you're just looking to see what's going on out there, what's happening this weekend, there's a lot of information. Everybody's sharing stuff, and it's a great website.
Have you used that website to go to meetups or anything like that?
I believe I found travel groups on there, and I did some traveling through there. And but what I really liked the most was things to do in Korea, what's happening around. So I might necessarily not have done a meetup group, but if there was a band or a performance coming, I would be reading about it, and then I'd go and look online and book tickets. So that was really great.
I have one question about that because you mentioned lesson plans being a big reason why you went there, and you said that you can find lesson plans for specific sections of specific textbooks, right?
Yes.
So I've heard that textbooks for, in public schools in Korea at least, the textbooks for English, for the English language classes change very frequently, like almost every year. And
Yes.
that always struck me as a huge injustice to English teachers because the English teachers in Korea, especially the Koreans, the actual native Korean teachers, have to prepare completely new lesson plans for a new textbook every single year. Is that right?
That's correct.
Ugh, that I can't stand that because then I saw my girlfriend over in Korea at the time. She was having to develop all of these lesson plans, and I said, well, why can't you just reuse them? And she told me, well, no, they're changing it every year. And I look over at people from the math department or the science department. They're leaving early every day because they're using the same lesson plan they've been using for the past 3, 4, 5 years.
I know. So how amazing is it if they say, "Oh, this year we're doing this textbook," and you can go on Waygook and find a PowerPoint and be like, "Look at, I have all these ideas right now." Sometimes I would just download a various different PowerPoints and games, and I would just send them to my co-teacher and say, "Take a look at these, because even when I'm not teaching with you, maybe you can use them." And they often would. I'd be walking by their class, and I'd see PowerPoints I'd given them from Waygook, and they would edit them and kind of change them for what was working for their class. But I thought it was such a helpful tool, and it wasn't taking any time from me. And then if I would edit the PowerPoint that was working for me, I would upload it back to Waygook and say, "Here, I've revised this, take a look." And you can see how many people are downloading your stuff and how good it is. People are also leaving comments. "This one's fantastic." And then you can go and find that.
Bingo. Amazing.
Yeah. Hmm.
I wish I had known about it when I was there. But
Yeah.
Meredith, as always, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, James.
Cheers. The takeaways from Meredith's advice are very important for all new teachers going abroad. First of all, set up collaboration with your co-teachers in your very first week. Set the habit early and stick to it. Number 2, define your roles. Make sure you understand what you're responsible for within the classroom and what the native teacher is responsible for. And number 3, be respectful. You're going into their country and they understand that you're probably making a little bit more money than them, and they're probably doing a little bit more work than you are. So make sure that you're doing everything you can in your role as the native English speaking teacher to energize the classroom and make the kids learn as well as they can. And number 4, use resources that other teachers have already put out there on the internet. Waygook.org was a great piece of advice from Meredith, and you can find that link underneath this episode on our website. As always, if you're interested in teaching abroad, start a conversation with us today. TruthTeacherServices.com. Talk to you soon.
Satisfaction.